When people think about sex, they often think about the genitals. How hard is my erection? How wet is my vagina? How can I perform better? But what if I told you that the most important sexual organ isn't your genitals at all? It's your brain. Hello and welcome to Ask a Sex Therapist, a space where we explore sexuality, intimacy, relationships, and sexual well-being with curiosity, compassion, and evidence-based understanding. I'm Justine Gilliland, a sex therapist and counselor, and in today's episode, we're exploring the question, why is the brain the most important sexual organ? Although we often think about the body or genitals when it comes to sex, the brain determines whether something feels sexual, controls arousal, generates desire, orchestrates orgasm, and gives sex meaning. In many ways, we have sex with our brains, not only our genitals. Pleasurable sex is a whole body and whole brain experience. So let's explore the brain's role in sexuality. First, the brain interprets sexual stimuli. The first reason is that the brain determines and interprets whether a touch, scent, sound, sight, smell, or taste is a sexual stimulus. A situation is evaluated as erotic or not by the brain, utilizing values, beliefs, and past experiences that have shaped us. Without the brain interpreting signals, signals simply remain signals. They do not become sexual cues. The same touch can be experienced very differently depending on the context. A touch may feel exciting, intimate, and pleasurable in one moment, yet uncomfortable, irritating, or completely neutral in another. The difference is not necessarily the touch itself. The difference is how the brain interprets that experience. The brain controls arousal. When the brain interprets a signal as sexual, it sends signals to the body to turn on arousal. At the same time, the brain is constantly scanning for potential threats and reasons why sex may not be appropriate right now. If the brain detects danger, stress, pressure, fear, or discomfort, it can send signals to the body to turn arousal off. When the brain is picking up turn on signals and the turn off signals are dialed down or absent, full mental and bodily arousal can occur. While the brain is largely responsible for turning on arousal, genital arousal can also occur as an involuntary reflex response to genital stimulation. However, even in these situations, the brain still needs to determine whether the experience is wanted, unwanted, pleasurable, or threatening. This highlights why the brain is so important in sexual well-being. The brain determines subjective arousal. In other words, whether a sexual experience feels pleasurable and desired. Subjective arousal is far more important to sexual well-being than genital response alone. Not only does the brain control arousal in response to external stimuli, it can generate arousal entirely on its own. This occurs through thoughts, fantasies, memories, emotions, and imagination. The brain can create such powerful arousal that it activates the body's sexual response without any physical touch. In some cases, the arousal generated by the brain is strong enough to lead to orgasm from thought alone. A familiar example is orgasms that occur during sleep as a result of sexual dreams generated by the brain. The brain is the chemical factory of desire. The emotional brain and pleasure centers release chemicals that drive sexual behavior. Desire is the motivation or interest in sexual activity in anticipation of pleasure or in response to pleasure. Again, the brain plays a critical role in determining what is pleasurable and what is not. When the brain interprets something as pleasurable, it releases chemicals such as dopamine that increase motivation and encourage us to move toward rewarding experiences. The brain is not simply responding to pleasure, it is helping create the motivation to seek pleasure in the first place. Orgasm starts in the brain. Orgasm is the release of sexual tension. The brain must receive enough stimulation and signals to reach a threshold of release. The brain intensifies sexual stimuli, coordinates the sexual response, and releases pleasure chemicals. Once the brain reaches a tipping point, a sudden transition occurs that results in orgasm. While the physical sensations of orgasm are experienced in the body and genitals, it is the brain that gives those sensations meaning. It is the brain that creates the experience of pleasure. The brain gives sex meaning. Perhaps the most uniquely human aspect of sexuality is that sex carries meaning. Sex in humans transcends purely biological functioning. The brain gives us the capacity for self-awareness, language, imagination, memory, and emotional connection. The brain allows us to experience intimacy, vulnerability, desire, romance, attachment, and love. It gives us the ability to fantasize, dream, remember, anticipate, and assign meaning to our experiences. Our values, beliefs, and sexual messages are stored in the brain. Our memories are stored in the brain. A history of pleasurable sexual experiences can teach the brain to anticipate future pleasure. A history of painful, frightening, or difficult experiences can teach the brain to anticipate threat. Long before we engage in sexual intimacy, our brains have already developed templates for relationships through our earliest experiences of connection and attachment. These templates influence how we experience love, intimacy, desire, and vulnerability in adulthood. This is why context matters so much. Context may be external, such as who you are with, the setting, and the quality of the relationship. Context may also be internal, such as whether you are stressed, exhausted, relaxed, anxious, or emotionally connected. The exact same look from a partner can feel pleasurable in one context and completely unappealing in another. Context is everything. So, here are some common myths about the brain and sexuality. Number 1, sex is mostly about the genitals. The genitals are certainly important and can be a tremendous source of pleasure. However, without the brain interpreting that touch as pleasurable, it is simply friction. Number 2, if the body responds, a person must want sex. Genital arousal and subjective arousal do not always match. Physical arousal does not automatically mean desire, enjoyment, or consent. Number 3, attraction alone should create arousal. Attraction is important, but attraction exists alongside context, stress, beliefs, emotions, relationship dynamics, and physical stimulation. Number 4, sexual difficulties are purely physical. In reality, sexual challenges often involve a complex interaction of biological, psychological, relational, behavioral, and social factors. So, what does all of this mean for me sexually? As you reflect on your own sexuality, consider: what values and beliefs do I hold about sex? How did those beliefs develop? What turns me on? What turns me off? In what specific context do I experience the most desire and pleasure? What does sex mean to me? How is stress affecting my mental and physical well-being? What ingredients create the most pleasurable sexual experiences for me? When do I experience the greatest desire within my relationship? These questions help us better understand our own sexual blueprint. And finally, It is really important to remember that we have sex with our brains, not only our genitals. How can sex therapy help? If the brain is the most important sexual organ, it makes sense that many sexual difficulties cannot be fully understood through a purely physical lens. Sex therapy takes a holistic approach to sexual well-being by exploring the biological, psychological, relational, behavioral, and social factors that influence sexuality. Together, we explore how your experiences, beliefs, values, and relationship dynamics shape your sexual experiences. The goal is not simply to improve sexual function, but to enhance overall sexual well-being, intimacy, pleasure, and connection. Thank you for listening to Ask a Sex Therapist. This podcast is a space where I'll be exploring common questions and themes that arise in my work around sexuality, intimacy, relationships, and sexual well-being. Topics that many people quietly struggle with, but rarely talk about openly. If you'd like to learn more, explore related blogs, or inquire about online sex therapy across Australia, you can visit my website at wellbeingcounsellor.com.au. You can also subscribe for future conversations about sexuality, intimacy, relationships, and emotional well-being.